Let's move on to the last topic of the panel. We're going to fast forward to the summer. And, it's quite evident that this attacking line at Tottenham maybe isn't the exact attacking lineup that Ange Postecoglou can deploy. Maybe the wingers aren't particularly in line with the way Ange likes to play his football. So we'll start with you, Sonny. How many attackers do you think Spurs need to bring in this summer?
Oh, that's a big question. I mean, personally, I think our strongest front line at the moment is Son, Richie and Kulusevski. I personally think Son's better on the left than through the middle, and I think that was evident at the weekend. It's the question whether do we need another winger, because is Solomon going to be moved on, because he seems to have gone missing and his injury doesn't seem to be like sorting itself out, and do we want a more potent number 9? Is Richarlison the answer? I feel like Richarlison has shown good form this season, but the way we play our football, we've got to be taking our chances week in, week out, and at the moment our wingers and forwards, apart from Son, are not taking those chances when they fall to them. So I personally think we need another winger who's quite competent. Probably, I said that I think we will make Timo Werner permanent, but maybe we then move on Solomon, bring in another winger. Probably, I can see it being a youngster, and then maybe a forward to contest with Richarlison. Because at the moment, is Feliz the answer? Not so sure. So I think that's what we're going to do. I think a striker and a winger are going to be brought in. Names, it's hard to chuck names out when we don't really know, based on where we're going to finish and budget and all that sort of stuff. So I think a winger and a striker.
Yeah, I do disagree with you somewhat, Sonny, which I'll get into in a second. But let's take it over to Brains and see what he thinks.
Yeah, no, I seriously worry. That front line that Sonny's suggesting, I don't see other than Richie's little purple patch, which the more it goes on seems like a bit of a purple patch. I think there's more evidence for right now the best front three being Werner one side, BJ the other side, because they've scored goals together. They've done it. Yeah. Went right across. And isn't that how Ange likes to play football? That his wingers come up at the back post and get the ball in, because the centre forward has to be doing little drop runs for the cut back. Son scored like that. We score goals like that. And also the defenders then drop and then leave the space in behind. So it's a brilliant tactic. It's a clever tactic. You put Kulu there at the weekend, first half, ball goes across the line. Why is Kulu not at the back post? If you're going to be a winger, you have to come in at the back post. He had tap-ins. He just wasn't ever there. So he's not the right winger. No one convinced me in a million years that Kulu is the right winger for Ange ball. He doesn't get to the line. He always cuts back. It's the easiest thing in the world to defend. He's always going to cut back. And you don't have to stop him when he cuts back. You just know that he's slowed all the play down, and then everyone gets in a position, and he passes the ball back. It's the worst player for Ange ball. Kulu does not work as a winger for Ange ball. The other side, everything I've seen from Werner, that's fine. Take the man to the lane, put a ball flashing across the box, goals. So if right now, if you're going to play that system, I think Werner should stay. Obviously, you get rid of Gale, you get rid of Solomon, you bring in a great, another fast winger who's going to get to the line. Personally, I don't also believe that Werner is exactly the quality that we need. So maybe it's a case of don't keep him and just bring in 3 blazingly fast dribbling wingers. And then you can maybe move around Kulu and see if he can get back into this, find his form. Because I think the worrying thing about Kulu is he was so bad in the Villa game first half. He was so bad. And then he was good in the second half, as in just positionally he was better to sneak in and get the ball. He wasn't incredible, you know what I mean? He was positionally good, better, But then he reverted and stayed bad form the whole way through the next game. So that's the worry for me. BJ is young, he makes mistakes. Sometimes he isn't strong enough, but then sometimes he is extremely strong. Then sometimes he just gets to the line, he's got assist after assist this season. Get to the line, put the ball across, front post, back post. He reads, he looks up and he finds the pass. So I think this is what I think if you're Ange, you're looking at going, BJ actually, if I tell him, get to the line, put the ball across, he does it. Kulu, doesn't and maybe can. So I think they're not quite yet, but I'm willing to say BJ's young. Werner can probably continue doing it. You probably would keep them because they're not bad impact subs, right? Like they've come on and they've both impacted and scored in games. So I think that, but I genuinely think you go into the market and you get maybe one or two. So you definitely sell. It's all going to be about how many players we can sell and get out and get sort of a bit of money for. You definitely get rid of Gale. You definitely get rid of Lo Celso, Sessegnon, Solomon. Anyone who's not played 10 games this season in an injury hit season, you're never going to play for the club. Like, when would you play if you've not played 10 this season? We don't need you, and we can't be this charity club that keeps players like, well, let's just feel sorry for him because it's tough life. But Ange is not going to be remembered in a few years for he was that nice guy that kept those players in. No, he's got a job to do. So I think we've got to seriously, if he wants to play that front foot football, you got to buy players in because those players actually even have to get back sometimes. So a lot of work in the market for me.
Yeah, for me, I think the number 9 position is sorted at Tottenham. When you look at it, I think Sonny is the best number 9 at the football club. That's where I disagreed with you, Sonny. I think he's very effective there. But having said that, he's the best left winger at this football club as well. But I do think he's more effective at number 9 from what he's shown this season than he is from a left. You look at maybe a development in a player's career, and I think that's what you're seeing with Heung-min Son at the moment. So I'm happy going into next season with Sonny as the starting number 9, Richarlison and Valise as the backup options for number 9 going into next season. Obviously, if a big bid comes in for Richarlison, then that's something you've got to think about, and that's something that you've got to replace. But I'm looking at it as next season as Richarlison is going to be here, and Richarlison is going to be the backup number 9 for Heung-min Son. So where it leaves us is options on the wings, and I don't think that any of the wing options, maybe bar Brennan Johnson and Solomon, in terms of what they want to do and what they're looking like they can do, are fit for Ange. I think Kulusevski, I want to see him move into the middle and maybe be the replacement for Lo Celso, whether it be fighting James Maddison for the number 10 position or against low blocks playing alongside James Maddison in the midfield. So I want to see Kulusevski move a lot more central in the team next season. And then that leaves us with buying a right winger that can fight with Brennan Johnson on the right-hand side. And then on the left-hand side, it's up to Manuel Solomon to prove his fitness. If he can't prove his fitness, then we got to be ruthless and say goodbye and then bring in 2 left wingers for next season. So it's either a case of bringing in 2 wingers next season, or 3 wingers in terms of Manuel Solomon can prove his fitness or not. But I think that is the way we need to go. We need to bring in one-on-one demons. We need to bring in wingers that can dribble, get to the byline, cut back, cross. We just don't have that at the moment. And I think that's what's really hurting us on a consistent basis. But I'm certain of it now. I wasn't certain of it maybe a couple of months back, but I'm certain of it now that Heung-min Son has got to stay in the number 9 position. Where are you at with it, Sim?
Yeah, I think this season has been an example of where Son is at his best and is at his sharpest and is at his, I think, the most crucial thing, at his most effective. I think he's at his most effective by far when he's in a striking position. Yes, there are going to be games where maybe he can do well on the left. We saw that against Newcastle, and there's been other games where he has, made a difference on the left wing. And maybe there are games like, for example, against low blocks where maybe he will be more effective on the left than up front. But I think overall, if you're looking at Son's biggest strengths, and I'm looking at as well him in making a difference in each position, I just think he's so much better and more effective as a striker. I think it makes him the most use of his finishing ability, which is his most elite attribute. And I think he's also helped stretch the play running in behind, which I don't think Richarlison is as good at. And he can still do those first-time finishes that Richarlison can do. If you get it to him quickly in enough space, he's got that finishing ability to finish very quickly. We saw that against Aston Villa. Just needed one touch, a little bit of space, and bam, it's in the roof of the net. I think that is his best position, especially at his age. I think the way Ange wants his wingers to play, he wants them to be constantly getting at their fullback. He wants them to be relentless. He wants them to be stretching them constantly, taking them on, asking them different questions, cutting inside, going on the outside. And I just don't think that is Sonny's game anymore, as much as I love him. I just think he's 31. Physically, he has to manage when he makes those runs, how he uses his pace. And I don't think him being on the left is the answer anymore. So I do want to see him move away from that position. That leaves one space on the left at the moment. If I'm not really considering Solomon, to be honest. I think for next season, if Solomon gets fit, I loan him out and try and build some money, try and build some value for him. Even if he's fit, I don't know if I keep him because I don't even know if he's good enough, even if he is fit, to be honest.
I heard Shakhtar looking for a left winger.
Yeah, potentially. We can send him back to Shakhtar on loan.
Charge them through the teeth.
For me, I would not sign Werner permanently at this current stage. I think that if you're asking me as of 19th of March 2024, I'm not taking up the option for Timo Werner. I think he's a good player. I think he's a good short-term option for us, but I'm not going to sign him permanently. I don't know. I don't think I've seen enough evidence that he's a player who's going to be good enough to take us to the next level, if that's what we're trying to do. So I wouldn't sign him. So what I would do is I would sign two wingers. Maybe if we see Brendan as someone who can play on the right or the left, you sign one winger who's a specialist left winger and another winger who can be probably multi-directional, can play on the right or the left. To be honest, I'm not as pessimistic on Kulusevski as you guys are. I still think he's a good player, and I do think he can play that role on the right wing to a better standard than you guys. I think he's one of the only players as well who has a different quality in his ability to just keep the ball, hold off players, use his strength. And I think against Villa, I don't think it was just positioning. I think he was doing some really good stuff as a winger. I thought he was taking people on. I thought he was using his ability in the final third to pick players out, which I know he's got. And look, he is starting to get these goal contributions back up, but it's not at the level we like. I think he's on 6 goals and 3 assists, which is not terrible, but it's not the level that he came to Spurs at. But I still really believe in him. You got to remember, he's only a year older than Brennan. He's still also very young and getting used to a new system. So I'm giving him a bit of grace. I think he's doing pretty well.
But what you got to realise about Kulusevski is he considers himself as a central player. Why not play him where he considers himself and his strongest position? I
think he considers himself as a player who, look, at Parma he was a good number 10. I've also seen him say he likes to play on the wing as well. I think he can play both positions. He can play both positions, but he said in multiple interviews that his natural position, where he considers himself most strong, is through the centre of the park. I've seen that. Yeah, he said that as well, and he's also said he was also a natural winger. I've heard him say that as well. Like, he said both. Like, I think he can play both personally, and I think if he's going to be a number 10, it creates an awkward issue because he's not going to get in ahead of Maddison. He could be a rotation there. Could he be a number 8 potentially? Yes, but does he have the defensive discipline to play that position? I think we don't know that yet. So I think the best.
Then would you start him ahead of? Would you start him ahead of Brennan Johnson right now, though?
Who, Kulusevski on the right?
Yeah.
I think I would. I think he's a higher caliber player than Brennan Johnson. But
Brennan Johnson has 10 goal involvements, and Kulusevski has 9.
I get that, but I think Kulusevski has showed a higher level of performance I'm not looking at just goal contributions and stats, I'm looking at level of performance. And I think that Kulusevski has shown a higher level of performance than Brennan Johnson this season. A lot of the times where Brennan Johnson has provided goal contributions, his level of performance has actually been poor. It's only the last couple of games, maybe Fulham aside, you're looking at the Villa game and when he came off of the bench from Crystal Palace, where we saw maybe 2 games in a row, which was, high level of performance from Brennan Johnson. I think he can grow into that role, Brennan. But what I want to see is 2 out-and-out wingers with Kulu tucked inside and then one fight with Brennan Johnson, like a Bakayoko from PSV. I think he would be perfect addition for us. Perfect.
Yeah, I would think that someone who's like... Because Ange seems to strike me as someone who wants to blur the lines of kind of titles and where you actually are, what type of player they are. He seems to want people who are versatile, who can play loads of different spaces. So I just think he looks at
Total
attackers
football.
like, yeah, I think he looks at attackers like the front line, and that you should be able to play across the front line on either side. So then someone like, so someone who's like a goal scoring maniac when they're in the center, but yet who takes his man on and cuts it in, like, and that to me is like a Jonathan Rowe or someone like who you're going to pay 15 million and you've got a great backup, someone who's not a marquee but can be backup behind. I think the difficulty what we're seeing right now with Richarlison is that I don't know if you guys heard this, but something seems a bit afoot when you've got Ange saying no, he's out, he's definitely injured, and then Richarlison saying no, I'm back in training, I'll be available next weekend. Like, I can see that Ange doesn't really want to play him, but then you've got a 65 million striker who wants to play, being backup to a great striker. It's like, I don't know if that is something that could work long term. Like, I don't think Sonny should be on the wings. I think he's so intelligent as a striker, his movement. And then I think Richarlison's not as intelligent as a striker, but I don't think he's good on the wings. He doesn't take his man on and stuff. So I think you got a problem there. I think someone's going to have to give. You got too many players who aren't perfect for the system. So at that point, the easy answer just goes, well, like, let's not complicate things with Werner. Let's just send him back, because it's one less problem. If they're not perfect, they're not right. So then you go, let's try see if we can get a good amount of money for Richarlison. Brennan Johnson is young. He does have good stats. He's got something. He obviously had an injury this season as well, and he's got those stats. So there is hope for Brennan Johnson. He can learn. I think he can take on Ange, philosophy more. And then obviously Kulu, I think, is too much. We've invested. He's too, potentially the ceiling for him is too good in multiple different positions, which Ange loves. So you got to keep those two. But I think I think you got to be looking at Werner maybe back, Richie gone, Solomon off, Gale off, and then you've room to maybe bring in 3 or 4, and maybe you're looking at a Rowe as a young understudy first, and then like a Bakayoko or one of those bigger names,
The two names I want to see, and the two names I look at that I think would be perfect for what we're trying to do. On the left, a Nico Williams. On the right, a Bakayoko, Johan Bakayoko. And I think you could probably get them both for 80, 90 million for the pair. And I think that would be absolutely perfect for what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
But Sonny, you still think that Son is a better? You want him to stay on the left?
100. No, not on the left. I would never say the left.
Not you, Brains. Not you, Brains. We know your thoughts.
Go on, Sonny.
I personally think some of Son's best performances. I personally think Son's best performances have been on the left. You mentioned Newcastle there. I just still think I feel like saying he's lost his pace and that. I feel like his perfect goal scoring is cutting in and whipping one in, and he's good at bringing in a striker into play. Like, I think the reason Richarlison has showed good form is because of Son helping him out. That's why I think I'd personally look at like someone like Santiago Jimenez at Feyenoord, who can play on the wing as well and is a good striker. I think he'd link up really well with Son. I think the positive thing is we have a player like Son. It's a shame he's not in his pomp again at 27, who can, he can play both positions. I just really enjoy watching Son play off the left. I think that's just maybe a personal preference. In certain games, like maybe a West Ham, where it's going to be really like tricky and you're going to have like massive defenders, I feel like sometimes Son with his back to goal and aerially, he might not work. So that I agree with what you're all saying about, in certain games it works, in certain games it doesn't. Because against Arsenal, for example, he was fantastic, with those first time finishes and sort of being played in behind. So I personally, I think I'm a bit sentimental when I think about Son linking up on the left, and maybe from his time playing on the left wing under Conte, killed him off a little bit because he was basically playing as a left wing back.
But he also can't really do the going backwards, helping your right left back. That's tough for. Do you guys know how? Because I don't know. I know he's got 14 goals, 8 assists, which is, to be honest, that's actually pretty.
The majority have come from the striking position.
So that's what I'm saying. Do you know how many games he's had?
I'm not sure. I don't know the stats. Sim will tell you in a second. But I think it's much heavily towards the striker.
When he's playing as a left winger, it's 10 games, 3 goals, 4 assists, which is pretty good still.
Not bad, yeah.
When he's playing as a striker, 15 games, 11 goals, 4 assists.
So it's a goal contribution a game as striker.
And have you seen him this season do that whole cut in and top corner goals against Brighton and Arsenal? He hasn't
not really
done that.
But that's not the way Ange sets up, right? Ange wants his wingers to go wide on the pitch and get crosses in the box. And you want Sonny to use his best attribute, which is if he's on the left cutting inside and whipping one in, which is not going to happen that often under Ange, or being the number 9 and being as close to goal as possible so he can be the clinical striker that we know he can be.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, most of the goals you see, like, for other people, come from his work off the ball, you know, like creating the space. So it's not just about him. And I remember like Ange saying, "Look, you don't rate a striker on their goals and assists. Like it isn't just that, because 80% of their job is everything else, you know." But then you look at 80%. If you just watch Sonny in games, even in games when his touch is not well, just look at some of his work, and it is breathtaking. It's non-stop in his channels, creating the space and the danger for other players, you know. So I just strikers union here, but I think when I look at the two strikers, Richie and Son, it's worlds apart. It really is. He's one of the most elite finishers in world football, and he's been
and in Premier League history in terms of when you're looking at chances to goal conversion rate. I mean, you look at Haaland and you look at the amount of big chances he misses every season. Imagine if Sonny was playing number 9 in a Man City team. He would break all Premier League records by far in terms of when you're looking about how clinical he is. And all you got to look at in terms of the number 9 positional play, which what you're talking about, Brains, is that goal against Aston Villa that Timo Werner scored, I think it was, where he just moves, he just runs a little bit forward, then a little bit back, creates that space, and then Timo Werner's got an open goal to score into. I mean, that is elite level movement from a number 9 from Heung-min Son.
Yeah, it's the way that he stops, because he knows if you just watch the four defenders all stop, because the one who's nearest Sonny stops and panics, and then they all stop, and then it creates the area of uncertainty in behind them, which is unbelievable. You know what I mean? It's another level. And honestly, I'll inadvertently watch Richarlison. Now, sometimes it's actually his work rate's brilliant. He will come, he'll hold up, he's strong, he's got, you know, and if Richarlison gets in his head, hustle, 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 he does a lot of that better than anyone. You know what I mean? He does do that. But what you lose then is the little bit further forward in the final third. You lose the kind of creating of the holes. And when he does do that hold up play, Sonny, when he does a little touch, boom, goes, and he gets into the final point. Richarlison doesn't, because it is a strain on the body to hold it up and fight, and then he kind of like slowly.
I think he's got better at it. I think he has got better at it. I think he was really struggling before that injury, but I think he's starting to improve that quite a bit.
And that's not to say that Richarlison's assets aren't incredible either, and wouldn't also do really incredible in another type of side that fits him. But I think he's a bit of a square peg in a round hole for how Ange wants to play football, right? Like that's.
What about at the beginning of the season though, like against Liverpool, where he played quite well and Son was through the middle and Richarlison was on the wing? Is that an option maybe for next season to go back to that? I think we haven't actually seen it much, have we? Since I think the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I think it's an option. You got to remember as well, like what the beauty of this is. We got to realize that we're not trying to just get 11 quality players at this team. We need to have quality players that are of the first team quality on the bench. You know, you look at the Man Cities, you look at the teams that we're trying to face right now. You've got quality on the bench, quality in the first team. Depending on what team that you're playing against, you pick the 11 that are going to go beat that team. And sometimes it might be Rishi on the side. Maybe sometimes it will be Son on the left. But I think where they are at their best is at number 9 position for both of them. And I think it's a great option to have, you know, when Sonny's not there or when Sonny's tiring in a game, to bring on a Richarlison at number 9. You know, you've got 2 quality strikers there.
Yeah. Yeah, but if you look at so you're probably looking at Richarlison's stats, and it's like 10 goals and 3, and you're going like, wow, that's really not a bad backup. But it's
Yeah.
more of a case of he's actually had a lot of game time. Sonny's been out at the Asia Games. Like it's just whether or not if you're trying to build a 24-man team that you take a Will Lancashire in. You get a Jimenez in, but then you have a Lancashire. And you try if games are won, you give someone like that a chance. But that's
Brains,
something.
here's a question, Brains. If you could only keep one, Werner or Richarlison, who are you keeping?
If I could only keep one, I'd keep. This would be controversial, but I'd keep Werner over Richarlison because I think for how Ange wants to play, someone who can get to the byline, and in the little amount of games he's played, I've loved his runs. He has been taking his man on. You can see that they're saying to him, "Take your man on," and and I just think more other players score more goals that way. I went a whole season of watching Richarlison just so struggle, and obviously we're going to score more goals in this team with the way this plays. But what if you had the right players? That you'd score so many goals. Like I'm just thinking of that Villa game, the one where Bentancur came back and got injured. That first 20 minutes, how were all those chances missed? It blew my mind. We should have been 4-5-0 up in that game. And that's at times like that just you start to go, we could have been flying this season. It's not even been the defensive issues. We could have been flying this season, even in Fulham. Just those chances and players not being in the right positions, which you don't even then consider a chance. But I'm looking at it going, that's another huge chance. We should be scoring way more goals. And it's good that we've got players all across that front line who have good stats. This is why stats are deceiving, right? Because you could be going, well, look at that. He's doing great. It's like, no, that's the system is actually good. Players are not really doing as good as they should be doing. And maybe that's a harsh way to look at it. I don't know, but that's how I look at it. As an attacker, I think like that. It's like we should be scoring more.
I think I would keep Rishi over Timo Werner. I'll keep Rishi as the rotation option for the striker, and I'd bring in a winger that is much more suited to maybe and a higher quality player to what Timo Werner can do on the left hand side. Same with the right hand side as well. And I think Rishi is a fine backup to have for Sonny in the number 9 position. He offers different characteristics to Sonny as well, which you need when you're trying to change games late on. So I think Richarlison is a more than adequate backup if you have especially if you have a Valise alongside him as well. And people sleep on Valise. I think Valise, what he's shown in his small spurts in cameos for Spurs, I think he's looked great. He's got aerial ability. He's quick. He looks comfortable on the ball. He could also provide a different option for us coming off the bench next season. But Sonny, where would you sit on Timo versus Rishi? Which one would you keep?
See, controversially, I would sign in the real world. I'd sign Timo up, but I'd keep Richie. I feel like funny enough, in the summer when Harry Kane left, people were going, "Oh, Richarlison's actually the perfect and striker because of the way he sort of like charges people down and he's just."
I think I was one of those that said that.
I know. Just let Kane go. Just let Kane go. We've got Richarlison. But I feel like he offers that. I feel like if we were to put Timo through the middle, for example, because people did say that when we were making the signs, like, oh, he's a striker as well. I feel like he'd struggle more than. I feel Richarlison, he works well in that middle as well as on the wing as well. Whereas I think if you put Werner in the middle, I'd like to see it. It'd be like a little experiment maybe against Luton or something. But yeah, I think Richarlison has to take that one for me.
I don't even ask Sim. We know what he's going to say.
Sim says Ndombele.
100% Richarlison. I just think Richarlison, a player like Richarlison's harder to find, and I think he can actually fit the system as a striker better than Werner does on the left. Although, again, as I said, I'm not mad at Werner. I think Werner's done a good job. I just think it's going to be harder to replace someone like Rishi than it would be to go and sign someone who's an upgrade on Werner, in my opinion. And I think we're better off keeping him and selling Werner and replacing him, because it just means if we replace Werner, it just means Richie's going to score a lot more goals. If we replace Richie, would the new striker score a lot more goals than what Richie's scoring? I don't know.
Well, Sam, think about it
Because
this
Werner's
way.
still supplying him.
Yeah, think about it this way. Like, Richie came in and it didn't exactly hit the ground running, did he? He came
Fair
in
to say.
and he hit quicksand. That's what he hit. He came in and it was just like this guy. And even now,
Forget
like anytime he
Marseille.
does play, it's like how many
Never forget Marseille.
how many times is he gonna be offside? Like I can't deal with it. Like whereas Werner came in and we loved his movement. No one would pass him in the first
He's
game.
also offside.
Next game he's got.
It's true. He is always offside.
So I think Ange needs an offside coach.
Comparing
That's what I think he
apples
really needs. But he's an impact. It's only been a few games. He came in the the middle of the season. It's tough, and he's got goals and assists. Well, how could we be like looking at a guy who's come in, scored goals, set up players, and does the actual job of take his man on, get to the line, and then go, no, you're the guy we're gonna send home.
Look, he's doing. As I said, I don't think he's doing bad. I just think we're better off keeping. I think he's going to be hard to replace. Huh?
17 million just to take that on.
But then how much?
You're speaking Daniel Levy's language now, Brains.
How much is it going to cost to replace Richarlison? How much is it going to cost to replace
No,
Richarlison?
well, you're going to lose money, is what you're talking about. That's what
No. You lose. First of all, you're going to lose money on selling him, and then to replace him, if you're going to sign another striker who you think is going to score more goals than Richarlison, how much is that going to cost? That's going to cost upwards of 50 million.
But the cost of money or the cost of actually getting a Jimenez in, like. There you go.
I'm saying if we have Richie and then you send Werner back and sign a winger, then it's much better, I think.
Sam, tell me that this is what you're saying. If they do go and get a player like Jimenez and just sell Richie and keep Werner, you're going to be upset. You don't
I'm not going to be
think that makes
upset.
us a better
I'm
team?
just saying what I would prefer. This is a question what I would prefer. I think both options have their ups and downs. I just think I would prefer to keep Richie and sell Werner if I were given the option.
Me as well.
I'm going to be the Rio Ferdinand. Can't we just enjoy both?
You're going to get Brian Daigle back over here on the plane.
I think so far, from what we asked of each player, I think so far, it couldn't be argued at all that Werner has done more of what's been asked of him. Like, we asked Richie to score goals.
Yeah, and he's got 10 of them.
He did not.
But
he has now.
He has.
It's only taken him 2 seasons to get 10.
All right.
Yeah, but you're judging him under a Conte system where everyone was poor, not just
He was on the
him.
wing.
Fair enough. But like, how many goals and assists is Werner going to have in 2 seasons?
Don't know.
Well, we need better than Werner, is my opinion. Rishi, for me, is a backup. That's where I'm looking at him for next season, backup to Heung-min Son.
But that's an expensive backup. That's a very
And so is
expensive-
Brennan Johnson's brought in for 50 million as a squad player. You know what I mean? That's the level of where we need to be spending. That's this market.
So I say get rid of Solomon, get rid of Hill, keep Werner as a backup, and then get 2 50 million wingers. And if Werner just plays every now and then, comes on for 5 minutes and creates an assist or scores, great. You know, I think you're building a 24-man team. I think you need quality like that. I think every now and then you need marquee names who are, especially if you can get him for only 17 million. I think he's worth 17 million. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think if you're keeping Werner, you have to bring in Nico Williams to
100%. I'd bring
play
in
ahead of
someone.
him.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I'm talking about if you're keeping him, you're talking about if there's an injury crisis. If we get an injury crisis before him coming in, you're going like, we know Brian Hill just can't do it. Even with Solomon's there, we know he's a little bit lighter. He doesn't just take his man all the time. So I think you get rid of the dead weight, you get rid of the players who can't play, and then you bring in a Bakayoko or a Williams. Do you know what I mean? And then you've got
both.
your starters.
We
and
want
then
both.
Yeah, you've got your starters, and then you've got your Johnson and your Werner there, and you've got your Sonny, and you've got your Richie in the centre.
Exactly. So if you go into next season with, on the left-hand side, Timo and Nico Williams, number 9, Sonny Richarlison, and on the right-hand side, a Brennan and a Bakayoko with Kulusevski moved into a more central area, I think you're looking at an unbelievable front line.
Yeah. And
So
you're
I
talking
think-
about that might only cost you like 90 to 100 mil. But like, look at the quality you're actually bringing in.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that is where we're going to leave it today. So thank you everyone out there for tuning in today for the panel show. Big up to Brains and Sonny as well for coming on.